Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Elevate podcast, where we explore the strategies, decisions, and realities that's shaping the future of behavioral health. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest blind spots in our industry. Because the truth is, most treatment centers are really good at getting patients sober, but not that good at helping them stay sober. And when 40 to 60% of patients relapse within the first 90 days, it raises a bigger question. Are we really optimizing for better outcomes, or is it an admissions focus? Are we truly building long lasting recovery programs, or are we just creating short term stabilization? Joining us today is Frank Galimidi, CEO of Sunview Wellness, who brings nearly 2 decades of experience across full continuum care and a strong point of view of why extended care is being overlooked and why that it's costing both patients and providers in the long run. Welcome to the show, Frank.
A pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on board and sharing some of your experiences. Would you mind maybe give the listeners a brief overview of your career trajectory? You've been 2 decades in this industry, wearing a lot of different hats.
It's hard to believe, but my name is Frank Galimidi. I'm the CEO of Sunview Wellness. I've been working in the behavioral health space, primarily in addiction, but mental health as well, for the last 23 years. First 6 years in New York and the last 17 years down here. I've done everything from being a junior counselor now to CEO. Been very involved not only in the clinical and the treatment, but obviously the business as well. When I first started doing this all those years ago, I never thought I'd be sitting in a seat as CEO running a company or sitting on a podcast. Really, all I wanted to do was help people. The idea to do this now is really exciting. Over the last couple of years or so, I've been focusing on wanting to get myself out there a little bit more, talk about what I see happening in the industry and how it's impacting our clients in the community. And so when this opportunity came up, I was all down to meet you, man.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. I'm curious, you wearing so many hats and evolving into CEO and previously worked with different levels of care in different states. How have you seen the market or the industry evolve just in the recent years?
Wow, in the recent years, it's really changed a lot. I'd probably say over like the last 5 or 6 years in particular, it's changed a lot. And we were an industry, in particular down in South Florida, that was a primarily out-of-network insurance model. Access to care or point of entry was a lot more difficult for a lot of people. There wasn't a lot of options for people with HMO insurance, let alone Medicaid or anything like that. And what I have seen in the last few years is that the entry to care has been a little bit easier for people, which I think is good. There's more access for people that maybe aren't wealthy or don't have Cadillac PPO insurance policies that could actually get help. I don't necessarily know that was by design by the treatment center industry itself. I think it became a necessity based on payer scrutiny that's really kind of taken place over, in particular, the last 6 or 7 years. And being quite honest with you, South Florida was a big part of that overhaul of insurance, the way insurance takes a look at treatment. Because of that, one of the things that you're seeing, in particular in the last 5 or 6 years, is that you've seen a lot of programs work more towards really doing what they do in a lot of other businesses, which is to grow to scale. And because of that, and because certain levels of care are a little bit easier to scale than others, you've seen more of a shift of people more focusing on detox and residential services as opposed to lower levels of service, PHP, IOP, and outpatient, which is kind of what I specialize in. So that's been a big directional shift that we've seen as well.
I mean, obviously, that's the initial stage of care needed and certainly very important. But I think just going back to those regression rates and the very common statistic about high relapse rates, and it doesn't just stop the buck after the 30, 60 days after detox and rest. Why do you think there's not more focus on step down or at least the continued care? So many residential and detox facilities when you look at it from a market standpoint in comparison to IOP, PHPs.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're bringing this point up because I think it's really important for the well-being of our clients, the industry, and all that. And you're right. Detox and residential are crucial components of the continuum of care. People need to go into detox. They're on substances that they become physically dependent on. Obviously, we know that some detoxes could be life-threatening. So going in for alcohol, benzodiazepine detox, and residential treatment where clients are first going into post-acute withdrawals and kind of being in a safe place is super important for them. But I think people that work in the industry know that extended care, PHP, IOP, OP, the lower levels of care where the rubber meets the road for the clients and they
Mm,
really, really get better. Everything actually starts to happen in real time for those clients because those levels of
mm,
care are really designed to help clients reintegrate back into the community, taking
mhm,
on adult responsibility, going to
mm,
work, balancing family, balancing life while staying sober at the same time. And the reason that I believe it's kind of shifted in the other direction where people are more opening up residential and detox facilities is because it's a little bit easier to scale because there's shorter durations of stay. Detox in particular, it's a medical level of service. It's not really a clinical
mm,
level of service. So you're
mm,
following detox protocols and things of that nature, which are fairly easy to follow those protocols. Not to say that there aren't issues that come up. There are. But
mm,
from a certain perspective, it's a little bit less individualized than the lower levels of service, which are more clinically intensive. The turnaround time for a detox and res, let's just say it's 28 days. It could be shorter, maybe on the
mm,
outside longer, maybe to tops 35, 40 days. There's a quicker turnaround of clients. It pays at a higher level of reimbursement. We all know that,
mm, mm,
significantly higher than lower levels of care. And because of that, it is more financially lucrative. And when I use that word lucrative, it's not to say that I think that people are just trying to make boatloads of money. What I'm saying is that it's a lot more difficult to
mm,
be financially viable at lower levels of service than it ever was before because the reimbursement rates have dropped so significantly in the
mm,
last few years. One
mm,
other thing that I think is important to note, and part of the reason that a lot of people open up residential levels of care and detox as well, is that in particular, if people are having family members helping to support them get into treatment, there's a level of desperation there, right?
mm,
Hey, my son, my daughter, my wife, they're going to die. I need to get them into help. And whatever I need to do to get them into treatment, if I have to
mm,
take out money on a credit card, if I have to take out a second mortgage on my house, people are
mm,
willing to do that. Now, if you fast forward 30 to 45 days and somebody's kind of out of that what's perceived dangerous period of time, and now we're suggesting that people step into extended care, which is a clinical level of service, the level of desperation to kind of come up with that money or the funds that we might need to do to get people into those level of service goes down.
mm,
People are not as desperate to do that. That threat of my kid's about to get locked up or my son or my wife is about to die because of their alcoholism, that starts to
mm,
shift. So it becomes a much harder, and I'm putting it in quotes, sell
mm.
to get somebody to
Yeah,
kind of step into that level of service. There's less desperation there.
sure. It makes sense, and I've known enough addicts, friends, family members, etc., that it's also very common after you've gone through your detox and your rest, and you feel you're on top of the world, and you got everything sorted out. But it's the long term work that is needed, and staying connected and focusing on your routines.
Well, it's
But
interesting, the statistics that you had cited earlier on about that 40 to 60%, I really believe that that 40 to 60% number of why so many people relapse, is because they don't step into those levels of care. More
yes,
people followed and stepped into those levels of care after coming out of detox and res. I think we'd have a
mm,
much more higher success rate. But the truth of the matter is that most people don't step into those levels of care.
help me understand, because I've been in this industry like knee deep, all in for like coming up on 4 years. But I remember entering this industry. My background is SaaS and tech, and in that industry, the mother of all metrics, if you're talking about customer acquisition, is your CAC to LTV ratio, right? So you're looking at cost of acquiring customers and what's the lifetime value. So in my mind, when I walked in, it's like, why are we not focusing on like increasing the length of stay or stepping down? Because the lifetime value of the customer essentially gets expanded, which allows you to invest more in marketing. Furthermore, you get better success stories, higher recovery rates, and you can use that also in your marketing vehicle. So one thing that was on my mind is it because it's too complex to do continuum care? Is it because there's a saturation of facilities in California and Florida? I work with a lot of facilities and noticed some of these teams are good and they issue a promissory note to get people to fly in, and they got to step outside the day-to-day environment to sustain the recovery. And I fully understand it, but then what does it help if you get thrown right back into the stressful environment you were before? That's when I think the true work needs to get done.
Absolutely. You're
Would
you're
that be so?
100% right. It's interesting, right? So, yes, as far as complexity goes, to do a full continuum of care, and some programs do a really good job of bringing people all the way down from detox through res, PHP,
Mm.
IOP, and outpatient. But, what you will see a lot of times, in particular in the last few years, is that detox and res is more prioritized. What you do see a lot, and I hope nobody's offended if I say this, is that, listen, it's very hard to be great at everything. It's very hard to be great at all levels of service. My belief is that you kind of focus on what you're really specialized in. With me, focus on extended care here. My background is extended care. I'm really good at doing, PHP, IOP, and outpatient. I don't
Mm.
claim to be really good at doing detox. I can go out and go get a detox license and hire a doctor and start doing detox, but that's really not where we excel. And I think that you see sometimes that happen, people trying to do everything. And then what starts to happen is that those lower levels of care don't reimburse as well. They start to become, and I use this term all the time, like second class citizens in our industry. One of the other things that's interesting, and again, this might be controversial to say, but you're talking about cost of acquisition, right? And
Mm.
it's extremely high. We talk about $5,000 to $8,000 to bring in one client. And yes, I want to maximize value, but the cheapest admit is a readmit. The person that doesn't go through extended care and relapses and then calls me and comes back, that costs me $0. I
Mm.
hate to say it this way, and I tell you this as both somebody that's been as a clinician and as somebody that's been running businesses for quite some time. Readmissions are
Okay.
part of the business plan. It's built into the
Mm.
business plan. 20 to 30% of our admissions for the year are going to come from clients that relapsed and readmit. I know it's not popular to say that out loud, but that is the business plan for a lot of treatment centers. It's factored in.
Mm.
If they didn't have those readmits, their margins would look different than what it looks like now.
To me, that's just outright wrong. I understand the implications, and getting sober, I can speak to that, is not easy. So I completely understand, but it's definitely not easier with just a 30-day stretched and then not extended care and the support you need, because it is a lifelong decision and it's ups and downs, and it's going to be adversity, and you're going to get triggered to fall into your old negative patterns. So I think I'd always just, when I first got into this industry, I was like, what kind of restaurant could open up and then have like 50% of the people return the dish and say, I don't like this. It didn't work out as expected. I mean, so that, for me, I just like to make it really simple. And then if it's not working at that level, well, then something should be reassessed. We work with 40, 45 facilities, some into most of the conferences. And I see, go to the conference, I was always amazed about, holy shit, it's almost like just a referral trade show, right? Who can you take on? Who can we refer to? So I understand this in terms of your levels of care, the areas of specialization, the pay as you accept, the different demographics, and all those different factors that are in place. I think when you're going into recovery, I think it's to not be thrown around too much, and have some familiarity. Structure, I believe, is very important in recovery. Knowing who I'm going to work with, are they here for me? Are they going to be here for a long time? I think that's really what moves the needle at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, you're so right. Because think about if we're really trying to get better and we're really trying to do clinical work with you, right? There has to be a
Mm.
level of trust that's established, right?
Mm.
So how much are you going to open up to somebody that you're not going to be spending much time with, right? From a certain perspective, the way that things are, that the higher levels of care are kind of more like, if you want to liken it to a hospital, are kind of more
Mm.
like triage, right? And then
Mm.
these lower levels of care, like what I do for a living, is really, again, the nuts and bolts of the treatment. So that kind of gears you up for treatment. It gets you stable enough to be able to do some of the clinical work that we need to do. Because again,
Mm.
with the substance use, it's everything that happens underneath, right? And that's the presenting symptom. It's the feelings, the emotions, the deficiency in coping skills, and all these kinds of
Mm.
things. Unresolved trauma, which is a huge thing. There hasn't been anybody that I've worked with in 23 years that I've worked
Mm.
with for addiction treatment that didn't have experienced some kind of form of trauma. For
Mm.
somebody to open up and talk about those things, they actually have to trust that the person that they're working with is
Amen.
going to listen, is trustworthy. I'm not going to tell this story to one person that's supposed to be my primary therapist, and I'm telling it to somebody else next week. And so people become afraid to
Yes.
do that. A lot of people
Yeah.
that we work with, they've been holding in a lot of these things, a lot of these issues for years and years. This unfinished
Yeah.
business that we have, they've been holding in for years and years. So to get comfortable enough with somebody to actually start the process through
Mm.
all the, I call it the stuff in the basement, I
Yeah.
need to be working with them for a period of time. What we
Totally.
see, and studies have shown this historically for years and years and years,
Mm.
longer lengths of stay of treatment with decreasing intensity of level of care
Mm.
increases outcomes, right? It does. And unfortunately, as time has gone on, because of third-party payer reimbursement and because of payer scrutiny, a lot of the clients aren't getting the amount of time that they need to truly get better. You touched on something that I think is so important earlier on, these low levels of care that I'm talking about. This is where clients get to practically apply the skills that they need to stay sober and
Mm.
maintain work and learn how to deal with their family again and how to navigate issues and how to tolerate the stress and all those kinds of things. Doing that in an environment where I don't have to face any of those things, I am
Mm.
left completely unprepared
Mm.
to stay sober as I navigate my day-to-day world.
Why would the insurers, the claims for extended care, you would figure that essentially they're going to get a bigger bill a couple of months later by
You
not
would think so,
staying there?
right? I think that
Right.
just turn around and go right back to detox.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and for those of my colleagues that are here that are going to be watching it that were down in South Florida, unfortunately, there was a lot of unscrupulous kind of stuff that happened with
Mm.
overutilization of benefits and things like that contributed to payer scrutiny going up. Really taking a look at the details of what's going on. We have, unfortunately, down here, we've had a lot of recidivism, clients going in and out of treatment. There was a lot of overbilling. There was billing
Yeah.
of urine toxicology and all these kinds of things. And I think that
Mm.
when the insurance industry kind of finally caught up and saw how much money that they were investing into treatment, with being quite honest, very subpar results, I think that their level of scrutiny just went up.
Mm.
And they also take a look at, hey, a client has been in treatment 6 or 7 or 8 times. Well, what's really gonna be any different next time? Why are we
Mm.
gonna continue to pay for treatment? And the onus on that is on the clients that we're working with as well, but it's also on us. We have to as a treatment center industry, we have to take a look at every treatment experience for our clients. This needs to be the last one. This has
Mhm.
to be the last time that they're in treatment because there is no guarantee that they're gonna get authorized to do treatment again. And from a certain perspective, that's good for the clients because it kind of puts their back up against the wall, like, "Hey, no, I
Mm.
have to do this now
Mm.
because I don't know if I could just go back into another treatment center." Because that's what was happening, in particular,
Mm.
down in South Florida for a long time. They
Yeah.
used to call it the South Florida Shuffle. That's
That's
what
just
they used to call
yeah. It reminded me of this movie. You've probably seen it a couple of years ago. It was called Body Brokers.
it. Yeah, that's
Uh,
exactly what it was.
it was like mind blowing.
Yeah.
At
And it
at the
hit the
same time,
newspapers and all this kind of stuff, and it really put a
yeah.
negative spin on the treatment center industry.
Mm.
I'll never forget, I went up from New York, and I worked in New York for the first 5 or 6 years of my career, and I
Mm.
met with my old CEO from the company that I was at for 5 years, and he goes, "Listen, Frank," he goes, "I love you, but I won't at that time, I can't send the client down to South Florida because of what I hear is going on." And I
Yeah.
hate to say it, that's kind of true. That was what was going on in 2015,
Yeah.
2016, 2017 when
Yeah.
I saw that movie. Luckily, right now, things have gotten cleaned up a tremendous amount.
Mm.
And there really are a lot of good providers out there providing quality care. The bad
Mm.
players, really, they close shop. They don't exist
Mm.
anymore. But reputation takes a long time to strengthen. It takes a lot of time to regain trust.
It's unfortunate, like many other industries. I worked 10 years with Google, and that's why LegitScript got introduced. Is every time there's an industry where people are preying on people's suffering, whatever it may be, then scammers get drawn to it, enhanced regulations, which is completely bananas, the whole model, and overseas can't get certified. But the intentions, of course, are good. My 2 cents is just like we work a lot with facilities on everything from getting testimonial videos, the outcomes, the alumni coordination, good referral processes, that staying on top of mind with patients throughout the entire journey. I would make such a bold statement, say if you really dial that in, you will get more revenue than the readmissions of the people that keep relapsing, just because you would get advocates
100%.
for life that will give you every year new clients at 0% cost, walking through your door, say, I want to work here, I want to go to treatment here.
Absolutely, because word of mouth in our
Um,
industry, word of
mm,
mouth is such a big thing.
mm,
Client has a positive experience,
mm,
hey, and the people in their life, people that they're friends with see like, wow, look at the
yeah,
turnaround that so and so made. I remember what
yeah,
it was like before he went into treatment, and he was working in this extended care for 8, 9 months. And while he was there, he got a job and he's balancing bills and he's got his own apartment again. And his life looks good. I want that. And
Yeah.
that's what we're really hoping happens. Listen, some of the business would rather take the low-hanging fruit, which is, I'd rather just work with the recidivist clients, and I know that they're gonna come into detox. I'm gonna detox them for a few days, and I'll probably see them again in a week or 2. It's pretty much guaranteed business. I know that it's going to happen. I hate to say it, that doesn't get anybody better, and being quite honest, what it does is it reinforces a negative stereotype about our industry that not only has transcended our industry, but it's gone into the mainstream public, and it's definitely impacted the way that the insurance providers, look at treatment. They look at us as a failing industry, and that's contributing to the scrutiny that contributes to the decrease in reimbursement. In spite of all the media and all the stuff that you see about the opioid epidemic and all the people that need treatment and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day,
Mm.
the predominant thing that comes through that a lot of people see is treatment doesn't work. And that's not true, but there is changes that need to be made to reinforce that treatment does work.
It does work. I can certainly attest to that. But a 30-day stretch does not work. There should be requirements, longer programs in place, easier step down to other levels of care. Let me ask you a question here, because we run obviously a lot of campaigns, and we work on the CRM and the admissions and the intake process, and making sure when the bed board is about, and then we're working on getting the next admission schedule. Essentially, when you're working with a residential or detox, you said it yourself, the CPA, $4, $8, $10,000 easy. When you're working as an IOP, PHP, right? The very few people know what intensive outpatient program is. They don't search on Google. They don't go to ChatGPT. They're looking for, I think the most common query is addiction treatment near me, rehab near me, best way to get off XYZ drug. So an IOP PHP is essentially competing on those same highly competitive keywords. Could that be a factor for why most people look at it as a business model that's not sustainable, in addition to the lower
Yeah, I
reimbursement and
think
the
yes,
complexity?
100%. I mean, because listen, the revenue itself that you generate from these levels of
Mm,
care puts you in a position where you can't compete from an SEO perspective, from a searching perspective for keywords, because the revenue that's generated by a detox or res that has 100 beds versus an intensive outpatient or partial hospitalization that maybe services 50 clients at
mm,
a time, you could it's almost like throwing money into the middle of the ocean. It's like you
yeah,
pretty much are just going to lose it. You're not going to recoup anything. So
yeah.
what ends up happening is that very, very much become dependent on doing a lot of B2B work. The majority of the clients that we get here, I would probably
Mhm,
say about 70% of it is referrals from higher levels of service, from providers that trust us, that know that we do good
mm,
work, that they know that my
mhm,
average length of stay is 120 days and that clients do really well here and our outcomes are good. We do get some organic stuff, but it happens than what you would get at residential and detox. I don't have a call
yeah,
center here. We have one
mm,
business development director here who's phenomenal, and he
mm,
does a really good job. And being quite honest, the result kind of have to speak for itself. So communication, regular contact with the people that are referring to us, letting them know how their clients are doing,
mm,
outcomes, really tracking outcomes, and how long clients are they stepping down levels of service because they're progressing, and being able to kind of demonstrate that. Um, People that are successfully graduating and extend this
mm.
year, it's not that you graduated 28 or 30 days. You probably went through 150, 180 days worth of treatment and you've been sober for 8 months. There's different
Yes,
kinds of
yes,
targets you're trying to hit. They're probably back
yeah,
to work, right?
yeah,
They're engaging in family therapy. They're going to meetings. They have a sponsor, right?
mm,
All these things that we talk about that are so important, that
mm.
being quite honest, I feel like has been de-emphasized a little bit,
I
uh,
agree.
people that
Mm,
just do residential and detox alone will not stay sober. People that don't do
mhm,
extended care don't stay sober. People
mm,
have to learn how to start to navigate their sobriety in the real world. They have to
yeah,
start putting things into their life while they have the support of treatment, like
mhm,
AA or Smart Recovery or church, and then starting to
mm,
work with an outside therapist. They may be working in
mm,
family therapy or whatever it might be while they're still in this treatment milieu. So we set them up for success post. And that really is what we're looking for, right? I don't want to just put out clients that successfully graduated my program. I want to put out clients that stay sober, not
yeah,
just somebody that's a good client. Oh, they didn't give me a hard time. They were compliant. They showed up all the time. I be quite honest, I was able to bill them 5 days a week for 4 months. Like,
yeah,
yeah, that's great for the business in the short term, But
Mm,
that's not what this is about. That's not what anybody got into
mm,
this for. And I
yeah.
agree with you. If you do good work, it might take a little bit longer, but if you do good work and you build a good reputation, your business will do well if you do good work.
More now than ever, I think, with LLMs and AI visibility, it's going to be much more about understanding everything. I think with outcomes become visible, understanding the specifications or who's behind the team or the track record and sharing content, all those. I think there's going to be a smarter decision making process with folks going into recovery. On that note, do you think it's partially a resource allocation or a process challenge when folks are sometimes discharged, for instance, from rest, baffled a little bit about kind of like their approach to it? Do you think that's an area of opportunity that people could focus on in terms of getting more folks into extended care?
Yeah, I think listen, I've been pretty fortunate in particular, since I've been running Sunview, that the people that we work with that run higher levels of service, their team members are really, really encouraging
Mm,
clients stepping into lower levels of service, and they'll tell them the real deal, like, hey, if you don't do this, then pretty much everything that you did here was a waste of time.
mm,
And I really still appreciate that for the people that I work with on a regular basis. But I don't think it's emphasized everywhere as much. I mean, I think that part of the process is, hey, we know that we have to give a referral upon discharge the same way you would in a hospital. When you get discharged from a
mm,
hospital, they give you discharge paperwork and they give you a couple of
mm,
suggestions of places that you can go. I'm not saying that people are that blatantly negligent about it, but I'm saying that certain places prioritize it more than others. And there are programs out there that specialize in these levels of service that are looking to take
mm,
clients from month 1 through month 6 or month
mm.
7, and they're willing to take the lower levels of reimbursement,
Yeah.
that's what they're designed to do, to help clients step down through PHP, IOP, and outpatient, and it just really needs to be stressed. Unfortunately, again, I think part of it is it's not part of everybody's business plan.
Yeah.
The business plan, I'm really, really focused more on the admits and keeping the beds full.
Yeah.
And my metrics look good because I have a 94% success rate of completions for my 28 days. That's really what I'm concerned about more than that the person step into the right next level of service.
Mm.
And I don't think it's necessarily it's done maliciously. I think it's just done like my priority is to bring clients in, make sure that they
Yeah.
graduate, and that's it.
Mm, mm. Recently, I was talking with a facility, and they had adopted this. There's a lot of different programs out there, but this one was the equivalent of EOS. It's called Entrepreneur Operating System, and the whole
Yeah.
basis is like Jim Collins. And I think you have a business operational scorecard with 15, 20 metrics. And I was looking, and there was not really a strong focus on everything about from aftercare and long-term recovery, alumni checkpoints, or referrals for that matter. Even I was like, even reviews in terms of the percentage of people discharging, getting reviews, how low it was. I was like, you need to put that same emphasis on those KPIs and metrics as you do in the front end, as for the demand generation and admissions funnel.
Yeah, well,
And
it's interesting because if you take a look at like staffing, right?
mm,
Very often right above the behavioral health techs, which are usually the lowest paid employees because they're
mm,
entry level very often, and many are coming out of treatment and they're in early recovery, maybe 1 year sober, they're in fairly early recovery, and then with the treatment that way, that the next step up is the person that's the case manager very often, and the case
yeah,
manager, they're the ones that really have the job of trying to help place that client into the next level of service. And, even they're kind of de-emphasized from a certain perspective. They're maybe not paid the kind of wage that they need to be paid. We pay the clinicians more. We pay the doctor, the ARNP, the outreach development people. They all make more money, and there's more emphasis placed on that. So you can even take a look at it. If you really take a look at somebody's, salary schedule, for your
yeah.
company, well, this is a 35 or $40,000 a year job. And that kind of goes to show you about how important they think it is.
I agree. I agree. One resource for all those people being discharged and simply impossible. I hope to take all these talks about universal based income and people sleeping on the couch, put them in and let them be aftercare managers, alumni coordinators, and case managers. That's really what's needed. A funny story. I was talking with Drew, this guy from rollover rep, who is the answering service for behavioral health facilities, and he was running some pilot where they're calling leads and discharge patients on behalf of facilities in the spare time when they're not answering calls. And he was like, Gary, I'm just blown away. They get that our staff loves calling them because thank you so much for calling. I haven't heard from anybody for 6 months. They were so happy to share the stories, right? I've been in recovery. They're so proud of like, tape it. That's your testimonial. Or like, I'm so glad you called. I'm actually been struggling lately and I'm wondering if you have any recommendation and what could I do? Just
Sure.
because you're not keeping the finger on the pulse and essentially committing to fulfilling the care on the person that you brought into your facility in the first place to help get treatment. So
And
I think
we're
it's
starting
a
to see
tremendous
regulations.
opportunity. It's just very much tied up in marketing and business and bottom
Sure.
line, unfortunately. But my viewpoint is just if you put enough light on it, it will give the ROI that you're looking for.
Of course, and we're starting to see the Joint Commission and accrediting bodies and insurance companies like really start to take a look towards follow-up,
Mm,
3 months, 6 month post follow-up to see how people are doing. Listen, in the most altruistic way, alumni programs, they are designed to help let the clients know that you're still around, to be able to continue to offer support, to let them know that they're cared about, right? To
mm,
demonstrate what we talk about in recovery, which is the way of rightful living, which is being good to the next person. The byproduct of it could be that you might get some readmits that come out of it, but that shouldn't be the design behind it. And unfortunately, I think that that's been the shift. It's like, well,
mm,
no, we have an alumni program because I'm looking for readmits.
mm,
That's kind of unfortunately what we've seen happen is that there really is no this camaraderie, altruistic thing that we're doing for our brother or sister in recovery by reaching out to make sure they're okay. It's just, hey,
mm,
are they doing okay? If not, like, hey, do they have the same insurance? Let's bring them back in. That's
mm.
not what it was designed to be. And I see, unfortunately, it's been shifted in that direction, which is another one of these things that I hate to say it, sometimes makes people feel like our business is dirty.
Yeah.
That it kind of gives people the ick sometimes. And I'm really imploring people that, that are watching this and are doing this for a living. I'm letting you know that that's what people think. Sometimes people think that our industry gives people the ick. So
Yeah.
when we think about some of the decisions that we're making, take a step back and think, am I really doing this for the right reason?
Mm,
Yes, of course, we all want to make money. Listen, I'm the CEO of a company. Like my job is to make sure that this company is solvent and that everybody's making a living and all that kind of
mm.
stuff. But
Yeah.
I refuse to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think besides the fiduciary responsibilities, sooner or later there will be outcome studies that impact the payer contracts and the reimbursements and the preference of issuing contracts. So I think it's just getting ahead of it, and also from a marketing standpoint, it's going to become more and more transparent. So having that focus and focusing on the right metrics, and then having readmissions as a necessary tool to leverage as well, is to of course not
Yeah, we look at
neglect it
that
to
as a
help you,
bonus.
but
It's a bonus,
look at it as bonus.
hey,
Yeah.
doing the right thing.
Mm,
And then because I'm doing
mm.
the right thing, sometimes it helps the business, right?
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, you, with all your experiences, and I'll give you a little bit of context. Over the last 2 days, we get a lot of business from insurance companies for some reason. I guess they figure out that we drive more calls and then they can charge more. And I got two new facilities recently that came and hey, we need some marketing. We got X amount of beds, and I'm scratching my. I'm not even. I haven't been a treatment owner myself. Well, part for sporadically I was, but during COVID, so that doesn't really count. And I'm just like, you don't know what you're getting into here. It's not about just the marketing here. It's like, so with that context in mind, with all your experiences and how you see the future trending, if you were to give a piece of advice for any treatment owner, any entrepreneur or VC, private equity that's looking to get into this
Sure.
space, what would that recommendation be?
Well, twofold. Number one, it's not what you think it is. And the business model is not what it was in its heyday in 2014 and 2015, where there was 80% profit margin. So you have to kind of go into this industry realizing that there's a normal profit margin the way that you have in any other business, 15, 20%. So if you think that
Mm,
you're going to come in and right out of the gate, you're going to get rich, that's not the case. And it's not like it was then either, where it was almost like the movie Field of Dreams, build it, they will come. It used to be like that. There was so many people that were looking for treatment that were coming down,
uh,
to South
that's
Florida
certainly
or
not the
down
case.
to California. You just open up a
Yeah,
treatment center with all the bells and whistles, and you'd be able to fill beds. And it's really not like
yeah,
that anymore. You have to have patience.
yeah.
You have to be willing to invest in the clinical architecture of your program. The private equity has been a big component of the treatment center industry probably for the last, really you're seeing a lot more of it in the last 5, 7 years or so, where
Mm,
there's a lot of private equity involved in treatment.
mm, yeah,
And the way that that's set up will determine the way that your company is viewed. You
correct.
view it
That's
as a
correct.
churn and burn, which it's really just about bringing in as many numbers as I can and scaling and opening up as many treatment centers as I can, or you actually looked at as a really, really quality treatment provider that happens to be PE backed, that has multiple facilities. And there really is a big difference between the two, because there's a lot of PE backed companies that I wouldn't make a referral to. They have a lot of treatment centers out there. There's a lot of places that I could send clients to, but I won't, because the clients turn into a number. So for somebody that's PE, private equity, that's looking to get into the treatment center industry, make sure that the people that you have in charge really truly understand substance use and or mental health, or both, and the industry. I'm not saying that they have to have a clinical background like I do, but they really need to understand the industry. It's very, very niche. They have to be in it for the right reason. They have to learn about what recovery is. You know, bringing people into treatment is not like selling the last Cadillac on the lot. It's different.
No, I
You
would
know,
say, I would say that's non-negotiable.
that's been the mentality that some people have had. Well, it's just another product. It's just another product. So, you know, really getting people that understand this industry, have been around this industry, you know, to work with you is going to be critically important. Reputation in this industry is everything. So if you have good providers that know how to help the clients working for you and in leadership positions, that will help your business. Not just the guy that just got an MBA in public health or something like that. That's a different industry. They need to understand this industry. So listen, I believe having a clinical background helped me a lot stepping into this position, because, you know, I'm able to see it from all different angles. I'm able to see it from the business perspective, but also the long-term business perspective about what this decision I make now, how it's going to influence the optics of how my treatment center is viewed moving forward.
Amen. That's one point. I would say, just to wrap up what you said, maybe if anybody was curious, the last couple of years, and this just blows my mind when I hear these inquiries about we're opening a facility, XYZ location, and we got all this and money. I've attended it's called the TCIV conference in Arizona, Treatment Center Investment Valuation, and it's very investor focused, executives, etc. I was there more to like understand, pick people's brain, understand what's moving in the market. And almost 3 years ago, I think it was like this investment banker company called Bath Group or something along those lines. But it was very clear stats on how all the mergers and transactions, there was like out of network in a California facility, one-time multiple of EBITDA at your valuation. PHP was like 6-8 time in network. And I would be like, is nobody looking at this in addition to just getting the care? It's like, I was still thinking that it's the Wild West and people are going to come in and stay 30 days and you have $2,000 marketing budget. Building a valuable business based on, I think it just makes financial sense if you look at it from that standpoint as well, to have the extended care.
Listen,
that's my 2 cents.
I agree with you. And listen, even if the idea is that you want to stay niche and just do the detox and really emphasize to work with partners that specialize in doing that, then doing that component, because extended care serves as part of your continuum. So if the outcome is good, right? Somebody goes through your detox and resin, they step into, let's say they come to me at Sunview and the person is successful and they stay sober for 150 days here. And then you follow up with them, you know, your alumni coordinator follows up with them and hey, I've been sober for a year. That's very much has a direct impact on, because they made the proper referral they did. So it does have an influence. I take a look at what we do here. It's very much a continuum. I take over the case from what people in detox and residential did. And my job is to continue on that care and do the part that I specialize in and that my teams here specializes in. At the end of the day, it's about making sure that that client is healthy and stays sober, right? That's really what it's all about.
Amen.
So I think we need to somewhat work it together as opposed to fighting each other, you know? So
very well said. Very well said. Speaking of that, Frank, thank you so much for sharing all your experiences and all these insights. Really eye-opening for me and a breath of fresh air to hear your view on everything. If folks out there that want to get in contact with it's a residential detox facility that wants to get a true aftercare partner, they want to have a conversation with you, how can they get a hold of you?
The best way they can get in touch with me is via email, fgalimidi, GALIMIDI @sunviewwellness.com. and just shoot me a line. I'm more than happy to have dialogue. I'm always looking for people that are, to work with that are really doing the right thing by our client.
So good. Frank, appreciate having you in the show. It was a blast. I hope to see you back at some point as the industry is transforming with some more insights on how you're tackling that. Best of luck and keep up the good work. Thanks again for being on the Elevate
Thank you so
podcast.
much. It's been a pleasure and honor being here, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Elevate podcast. If you like the content you heard today, make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next show.